Experts are raising questions about a directive for all basic schools to desist from using English language as the only medium of instruction in the classroom. The Ghana Education Service prescribes English language as the mode of instruction in all schools in Ghana. However, the Education Minister, Professor Nana Opoku-Agyeman, believes the heads of basic schools introduce English language too early, making it difficult to prepare students adequately for higher academic learning. So, what scientific data supports these claims? And is this what Ghana requires to improve children's performance at the basic school level? My name is Stephen Enti, and this is today's big story. Suppliers and fabricators of high-grade UPVC windows and doors. Now, the Education Minister, Professor Nana Opoku-Agyeman, has asked heads of basic schools to stop using English language as the sole medium of instruction in the classroom. She makes reference to studies that show that students performed better when taught in the local language and urged them to use those as a medium of instruction and gradually introduce English language only after the local language has been fully developed. But is this what is needed to improve performance at the basic school level? Let's speak to some experts now and get some answers. Dr. Ahmed Jinapo is a curriculum and instructions expert from the University of Education, Winnipeg. Good evening, sir, and thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
Now, teaching in a local language and then gradually introducing English language after the local language is fully developed. Is this approach better than using English language mainly?
Well, first of all, let me say good evening to your cherished viewers. And I think this whole question or this discussion needs to be contextualized. And when I say it needs to be contextualized, I think it's emanating from a publication by the Ghanaian Times today, which states that the Minister of Education did indicate that that should be the means. But I did listen to the Minister of Education on Joy FM, which is an affiliate FM station to your institution. And she did debunk that. But I think let's look at it from this context. First of all, this whole policy of using the local language as more or less as something that should work in tandem with the English language has been a policy that has been in place even prior to independence. If you look at the Assimilated Development Act under Kwame Nkrumah, that's for 1951, there was a recommendation that English language should move in tandem with the local language. If you come to even the Jubu reports, it was there. If you look at the Anna Mwamensa report, but the point is this. The argument has been that the local language should be used at the lower primary level. That is from class 3 to the kindergarten level. That is the early childhood level. But at the end of the day, if you look at it, if you want to analyze it as to whether that is the right way to go, there have been a lot of studies that have gone to support that. Why am I saying this? One, people look at language as a means of more or less communication. So if I, for one, I grew up in a home where I'm able to communicate in a language, say Chi, I'm able to communicate better in Chi, and I'm able to translate that Chi into English. So I do not have a problem with that. And I think if you take the Ghanaian Times publication, the minister has said that no, that is not what I said. And that is the truth. We have that policy in place for a very long time. But I think this whole debate needs to be looked at within the spectrum of quote and unquote what is deemed as falling standards of education, especially if it's posited within the WASI results that was just released. At the end of the day, my argument is that when it comes to the local language, there have been certain countries like South Africa. South Africa, as a matter of fact, have 11 official languages. There was a study that was done at the university to decide as to whether the one or some of the local languages should be used in tandem with what English language. The findings indicated that look, some people even do agree, some do not. If you go to a country like Pakistan, as of 1947, Pakistan was using one of their local languages, which is called Urdu. I mean, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, but it's URDU. This language was a language that was supposed to be the official language during independence, that was supposed to be used for what? For instruction. But interestingly and quite ironically, the Urdu language was a language that was used in most institutions that were deprived. In some of the elitist schools, they were using English language. So I think at the end of the day, there have been a number of studies that have been done to more or less affirm the need for what the use of local language.
Right.
You can talk of the
Dr. Jinapor, I will have you hold briefly. We're joined on the other telephone line by Professor A.C. Sutherland Ade, Senior Research and Head of Language at University of Ghana, Legon. We must acknowledge her before we lose her. So, Prof, let me ask you a simple question so that we do the discussion between yourself and Dr. Jinapor. When we look at the linkage between language and intellectual development of the child, would you say, I mean, from an expert position, that when you develop your local language efficiently, you are better prepared intellectually to face the rigor of higher education learning? Is there any linkage?
Well, first of all, I need to just make a quick correction. I'm not the head of language in the University of Ghana.
Right.
I'm the Institute of African Studies, so I just don't, I don't want to claim, make any claims.
Thank you very much.
But let me just say this. I mean, I agree to a large extent with Dr. Jinapor in the sense that the idea really is not to burden a child with both learning new concepts and learning a new language. So you have a situation in which children are made to appear as if they are dunces or whatever, because they are having to learn a new language and learn concepts which, if taught in the language they already know, they could easily grasp. So it's not a very difficult, concept to put across. And it's certainly been proved many times over. So I don't think there's a big argument about that. The argument perhaps has to do more with, the politics of what are elite schools and what are not and all of that. That's rather the line.
Right. Yeah. Let me seek a little clarification. I mean, I was born in a home where my parents spoke strictly Ekwapim Twi. Now, I also grew up in a neighborhood where everyone spoke strictly Ga. So, growing up, before I started school, I mean, kindergarten, I was speaking good Twi, I was speaking good Ga. And then I learned English in a school where we only spoke English. I mean, it was strictly forbidden to speak any vernacular in my school, I mean, my basic school. So I ended up learning to speak English properly and then learning to speak Twi and Ga also at the same time. I do not feel that I have been any deficient in the progress that I made through school because I wasn't instructed in Twi or instructed in Ga. So I really don't get it. Seriously.
Well, you see, the thing is that the dominance of particular languages and areas, when you live in an urban area, it's a bit different. But when you live in a rural area, what you find is that the kids are really disadvantaged twice over. And it's quite important for us to recognize that the teachers end up trying to use their own means of putting the concepts across. When, if it had been formally done and they had been properly trained, this would have been done well. And also, I mean, I think I want to make the point very quickly that the idea is not to do, to have kids only learn in one language. You'd be learning English alongside. That has always been the policy. So that the kid would not be disadvantaged. So it's really very important for us not to go into this sort of binary divisions. It's either one or the other. That's not what the policy says at all.
Right. Prof, I'll have you hold and quickly bounce back to Dr. Ahmed Jinapor. So Doc, I want to emphasize that, I mean, the key issue here is the child's development, whether we use English as a medium of instruction or whether we use vernacular as a medium of instruction. I want to find out from you as a curriculum expert. I'm told that you are a curriculum instructions expert. If you were developing a curricula for basic school in Ghana, let's say you have a sole responsibility to do that, what will be your considerations?
First of all, is that Prince on the line? That's Prince, right?
No, that's Stephen.
Stephen.
Yes,
first of all, let me say I'm very honored to have Professor Sutherland on the line, and for me to share the same platform with her.
Yeah.
I've been on one or two programs with her, and I think I'm very honored. But you see, the point is this: it's not just about whether English or the local dialect, because that issue for me is established. I'm tempted to believe that the policy framers of our educational system vis-a-vis what language should be used were more in a better position to come out with enough empirical research to make a determination as to whether it is English or the local dialect, or it should be used together. And as we speak, the policy states that when it starts from the early childhood level to the lower primary, which is class 3, that is what is supposed to be. But you see, I started by indicating that this whole debate emanates from, quote and unquote, where we find ourselves today with reference to the results of the WASI, and most importantly, if you remember, the BC that we had. I think language as it stands, and I'm not an expert when it comes to language, but I am one that believes that, look, language is supposed to be a vehicle of communication. And one fundamental problem that we have when it comes to language or literacy, so to speak, is not about being able to read and write, but your ability to understand what is read and written. That is where we have a problem. And I think that if you ask me if I'm developing a curriculum, whether it should be English or it should be the local dialect, my simple answer is this. When you look at where we find ourselves today as a country posited within the global atmosphere, we are looking at a Ghanaian student who graduates from University of Ghana, who is not competing just with a student from University of Education, Winneba, but is competing with somebody from University of Virginia. Is competing with somebody from University of Bangkok. So when we are looking at another language, then we should be looking at not just speaking English or a local dialect. We should be looking at the person being able to speak English, number one, being able to speak French, being able to speak another language called Spanish. So when it comes to the local language as the policy framers of what it stands now have decided is that, look, a child who moves from the home, be it an Akan home, a Gonja home, or a Dagomba home, is better able to understand and appreciate issues within the worldview of that child. And that worldview manifests in what? The language, the cultural orientation, and all that. And let me give you a typical example. I, for one, am a Gonja. But my first language was Chi. So, technically speaking, Chi is my mother tongue. I speak Chi fluently than Gonja. My wife is a Dagati. She doesn't speak Gonja. I don't speak Dagati. Our children, what language will they speak? They speak English. So for them, English becomes what? The mother tongue. So I think this whole debate as to whether it should be English, it should be local language, it should be whatever it is, needs to be looked at within the spectrum of whether what is being taught, be it English, whether the children understand. And I think we need to look at it from a different level, in the sense that I strongly believe that one of the fundamental problems that we have in this country, and it's not backed by any scientific research, is that I'm tempted to believe that the people who are teaching probably are not in a better position to even understand what they are teaching. That is why it's very, very critical for us to move just beyond the students and even look at what is being taught at the universities, at the training colleges.
So it means that we should be concerned about the quality of teachers we churn out from our training institutions and whether they have the competence to teach our children what we want to teach them.
That is it. It's not even just about the competence, but even at the end of the day, look, I work in a teacher training institution because I work at the University of Education, Winneba. Today, as we speak, 10 years back, you agree with me that the workload on me today is different from the workload that was on somebody like Professor Sutherland, who was teaching at that time. What goes into it? And beyond that, the teacher who is teaching is not just about whether the teacher have the expertise or not. Is the teacher motivated? You agree with me that today as we speak, we've had so many strikes. We've had UTAG going on strike, POTA going on strike, NAC going on strike, and a whole lot of an array of issues. So it's not as simple as just saying that, look, it's about the local language or not. I can say on authority that, look, if we want to agree that the local language should work in tandem, which is at a higher educational level, is not going to work because we are moving in a global atmosphere.
In a global atmosphere. Let me bring Professor Sutherland Ade in. She's been on the line for a while. Prof, you heard Dr. Jinapor. Any quick reaction from you?
My quick reaction is that, one of the problems that we've had with this policy is inconsistency in developing the materials and training the people who are going to carry it out. And I think that inconsistency has meant that people don't really have confidence in the policy. And I think that, that is what we need to work on the most. And people in institutions like UNIBA ought to be, supporting the development of the materials and the training of the teachers and giving them the confidence to be able to do this. As far as having homes with multilingual, homes, I think that if you have a Ghanaian child, you should try to make sure that child can speak at least one Ghanaian language. Also, there are many countries in which having another language as you move along, including African languages, is quite a global thing. So you can go to, University of Chicago and so on, and people are learning Swahili, they are learning Hausa. Some of the best experts in our languages are outside of this continent. And it's something that we should be concerned about, because it gets to a point where you cannot communicate, or you don't have, the materials that cover your language and culture, and you have to go outside your country to go and learn that. It's not the best.
Prof, let's compare the China module. I mean, China has been able to develop its economy to a first class. I mean, to the level they are now, but it was solely based on the use of Chinese language. And now China is making a lot of investment in English language now. I mean, doesn't it beg the question why China adopted an all Chinese language medium of instruction in schools? Did it work for them, and that it cannot work for us?
No, but I don't think that we are addressing the issues that are very important, because language is not just a medium of communication. It also contains the philosophies and knowledge and so on that you have gathered within your environment over hundreds of years. And it's something which you shouldn't willingly give up either. And it does not make you less global. I think that China, you have to be pragmatic, obviously. But Chinese are not going to drop Chinese only to learn English, or Japanese are not going to do that. The Koreans are not doing that. So I think that we need to open our eyes and see what is deep down in the philosophy of how they run their countries.
But what do you think can work for Ghana? I mean, our languages are not so developed. We don't have Chi computers, for example, and sometimes even printing in Chi becomes a problem. And so if we're thinking about making one of our local languages the local language, is it possible? Can we make progress in the structure of our economy and how our education system has been structured all these years?
Well, there are two things that I want to say. First of all, we should be ashamed of ourselves that we can't do that. The technology is simple and old to try and sort of get the necessary, characters, into the system. So I don't think that, and when you go on Google, there's Google Chi, there's Google Hausa. I mean, it's they are doing it, and we are sitting here wondering what to do. I really, really believe that it's also not a question of just sitting down and picking a language. We have 11 official languages that are being used around the country, and we should work with them and try to develop them. And if we get a dominant language, it will emerge of its own accord. So I don't really, I think that I don't think that it's a real problem.
Right.
We're sort of finding problems. I mean, now that you have online services, and so you can do a lot of work. I mean, in fact, a lot of work is being done on our behalf, as I keep on saying, and it's time to take a hold of this situation.
Right. We're very grateful, Professor A.C. Sutherland. Dr. Jinapo, you're still on the line. You heard Prof's submission. I need to ask you, really. I mean, in recent times, the WASSCE results, for example, has not been impressive, and there are many who are wondering whether there is any linkage between the mode of instruction in schools and the level of intellectual development of these kids and their poor performance at the basic school level.
Yeah, I think, Stephen, first of all, a number of issues that need to be addressed. I think Professor Sutherland did say that it looks as if people are not confident in what is being done when it comes to more or less adhering to the policy of using the local language in tandem with the English language. I think it's not just about confidence, but it's about people not being committed. And there are a number of reasons for this, in the sense that you take a town like Accra.
Yeah.
If all things being equal, you want to adhere to a local language, then traditionally it should be Ga.
Yeah.
But you come to a place like Medina, my kids go to Pentecost school, but they don't learn Ga. They learn Chi instead of Ga. So there are a whole lot of issues that comes into play when you look at how Ghana as a country, and most importantly, how these urban areas are developing. We are moving from being homogeneous to being what? Heterogeneous. You go to a city like Winneba, you'll be surprised to know that most of the people there do not even speak African. What they speak is what? Is what do they call it? Chi.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to this whole issue of the WASSCE results, the Minister of Education has come to debunk the fact that, as per the perception that is being paraded around, that the results this year were the worst for her, and she says that as a fact. And I think that is supported by evidence, because she gave a trajectory of where we've come from 2006 to 2014, that 28% is not a bad grade. But I think at the end of the day, this should bring up a whole debate or a whole discourse on this whole issue of secondary education. Why am I saying this? When somebody goes to SSS and graduates from SSS, based on the curriculum, let's face it, if that person says that SSS is going to be his or her terminal period or a terminal stage, would that person be qualified to work and to work independently with little or no supervision at an institution like Joy or Joy TV? That is a question that needs to be asked. You know, at the end of the day, I know very well that even if we had 90% of the students who participated in WASSCE this year, the tertiary institutions in this country couldn't have absorbed them. That is a fact. So when you say pass or when you say fail, I always say that, look, when you say somebody made an A, a B, or a C, it's just a mark based on a scale. But at the end of the day, somebody who has been able to go through kindergarten, through primary, through JHS, through SHS, has that person gone through the processes of an individual who exhibits some kind of behavioral change that that person will be able to fit into society? That is the question that needs to be asked. And I'm a little bit worried that when you look at our educational program, especially look at the JHS, SHS program, unlike what the policy says, which says that they are supposed to be vocationally and technically oriented, when they come out, the reason or the mission for them is to climb up to what? The tertiary level, and that is not happening. So I think this whole debate as to whether they have failed or not, my interest is not about the people who have been able to make A to C, but my interest is those who have not been able to make it to the tertiary level. Is the economy in a position that will be able to absorb them? That is what we need to be thinking through. But you know, as it happens in Ghana, give us 1 month or 2 months, this whole debate will be what? Will be curtailed. Nobody is going to talk about it.
Doc,
then next year we'll go back to it, and it becomes a déjà vu.
Doc, I want to wrap up on something important that you raised about the quality of training. I don't know whether I'm putting it right, but you raised a key issue about the quality of teachers we have in our schools. What must change from where you stand? I mean, I know you work in an education training institution. What do you think must change so that our whole teaching method and approaches makes learning attractive?
I think, first of all, it's important for me to state that I did not say, or I am not trying to indict the caliber of teachers that we have in our various schools. But what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, I think as a nation or as a country, if you look at the past 5-10 years, we've been overly obsessed with this whole concept of providing other materials that should facilitate education to the neglect of what a pivotal institution or a pivotal body, which is the teacher. Oftentimes you hear of schools built under trees, you hear of books, you hear of computers, you hear of all these kind of things. But you never hear of what has been done to the teacher. And why am I saying this? At the end of the day, I have always said, and I'll say it, even though it's not backed on any scientific research or empirical statement, that the teacher is the bedrock or the fulcrum around which every successful educational program should revolve. Because at the end of the day, if you have an institution where you have the books, you have the classroom, you have the material, and the teacher is not motivated, or the teacher is not qualified, you are definitely not going to have a successful educational program.
That's right.
So my argument is that I think we need to move beyond this whole obsession, even though it is good, of pedagogy, where we are looking at instructional methods and stuff like that. But we should look at pedagogy. And by pedagogy, what I'm saying is that we should look at who is the one standing in the classroom. Because, Stephen, you agree with me that at the end of the day, the teacher is supposed to be posited as what? A model.
Yeah.
If you, Stephen, there, you are not a good uncle, somebody working under you will not be a good uncle.
That's right.
And if you do not have a good uncle supervising you, definitely you will not be a good uncle. So I think much emphasis should be placed on the teacher.
Right.
And you agree with me that within the past 3, 4, 5 years, emphasis has been placed on teacher remuneration. Most often you find teachers going on strike. Anything that comes about teachers, what you hear is that teachers are saying they are going on strike because their salaries have not been paid. I think we need to put a stop on this.
Right, Dr.
Jinapo. Ourselves of this whole issue. And I think with this, I think this country will move forward.
Dr. Jinapo, we're very grateful for your time on today's big story. Dr. Jinapo and Professor Osei Sutherland from the University of Ghana joined us on today's big story. Thanks for making time for us. My name is Stephen Ente. We'll be right back with the interactive segment. Stay with us.